Thank you, and welcome to this first session in the combined Microsoft slot this afternoon. This first part is what's new in the developer tools. You might already know me, some of you at least. My name is Peter, and I'm actually a product manager. Right? I think I'm the first one on stage at TechDays, so that's a huge honor. Don't tell Luke, right? But with me on stage, I have real developers. I have Steffen, he's the engineering manager on the DevTools team, and I have Esben, he's the architect on the DevTools team. And today, we're going to talk mostly about sort of the news in the last release, but also a little bit of news in the prior release. But just to understand the audience a little bit better, so how many here are, by raise of hands, developers?
Yes.
Great. That's awesome. How many of you have seen the launch event video or recording on YouTube on what's new in developer tools? Yeah, so that's less.
Bye-bye.
So there's going to be a huge overlap, right? But for the rest of you, you can watch this, or you can watch the recording on launch event afterwards if you want to see the details of that. There's going to be a recording anyway on this as well. Anyway, on the agenda today, we're going to talk about additions to the language. So we have the ability to have object extensions in the same app as the base object. We also have a number of improvements to the language itself. I'm going to talk about system application debug, some app source functionality, as well as some additional features from the previous release. But let's start with you.
Thank you, Peter. So let's talk about having object extensions and the app in the same app as the base. So what is this all about? It's quite simple. It allows you to put extensions, one or more, in the same app as the base object. You can have, for instance, a couple of table extensions in the same app as the table they are extending. You can also just have a number of extensions in the same app and then extend something in another app. Why would you do that? And one of the reasons why you would do that, and that's actually what we are using it for internally now, it allows us to structure our code around refactoring. We can keep different parts of the application together. And that may not necessarily be the same as the base table. For instance, the sales order contains a number of fields which are actually related to other areas. Now it allows us to gradually separate them into their own folders, in our case, their own namespaces, and by that giving us better design and maintenance. So why haven't we done that until now? Because it's something we have wanted to do for many years. And actually, all our tests, when we test the compiler, actually does this. There's a couple of reasons why we didn't do it. The first and primary reason why we haven't done this before is because of table extensions. And this drawing here shows how we actually structure an app, couple of table extensions in their own app. And the result of that would be that you would actually end up with 3 tables in SQL. And this is how everything worked up until last release. Or actually, the release before, last fall. And this is how we started out from the beginning with tables and table extensions. The problem with that is that whenever you query a table, you will get a join. And we have from the beginning thought that if we allowed you to easily create table extensions and tables in the same app, you would actually have an excellent opportunity to shoot yourself in both feet at the same time, and we would end up having a lot of performance problems. Then, last release, there was a change. Rather than having a companion table for each of the table extensions, we actually combined all table extensions into the same SQL table, so you end up having 2. There was a huge improvement. And we were actually, at the same time, working on this change to allow you to have them in the same table extensions and tables in the same app, but decided to wait because these two features were sort of competing. So in the Wave 1 release this year, we added the ability to have them in the same. And we did it a little bit smarter, because if you put the table and the table extensions in the same app, we actually collapse it into one table. So there's no performance penalty by doing this now. If you add a table extension in another app, you will go back to having the companion table. But if you only have table extensions in the same app, you will have a single table in SQL. This is not just for tables. You can do it for all objects that is extendable. They can now have base and extension in the same app and in all the combinations. So let me show this together with AppSourceCop, because this is one of the things we need to make sure also works. Because if we, in this case, try to delete a table field here, this small example is hooked up with AppSourceCop and the previous release of this app, and as soon as I do this, I now get an error from AppSourceCop saying I actually have removed the field, which was in the previous version. But as you can see here, I can take this table extension down here that adds the field as a table extension in the same app, and immediately it actually fixes the problem. So I can start refactoring inside my app without breaking dependencies. And the same goes for tables and pages here and enums. I can come this out, and again, I would expect an error here. No, I have deleted something here. Same for pages, and if I now add the same action down here, it solves the problem. And as you can see here, we have already started doing this ourselves inside the base app. This is actually the business foundation, where we have moved number series in, and we have a table extension in here. As you can see, number series obsolete. It actually one extends the other. Oh. This is in the same app, and we are going to do this more and more as a part of our refactoring.
Thank you, Esben.
Thank you.
Really nice. Yep. So now I'll walk you through some of the changes to the language that we've introduced over the last year. I'm not going to talk about extending interfaces is and as and this, just so you know. That's not part of this talk. And I decided not to show any slides, so I'm going to go straight to code. It's much better, right? Everybody loves this. And has the dark theme, right? Okay, so first thing to talk about is namespaces. We talked about it last year, so I'm not going to say anything else, but go to the session tomorrow if you want to have some answers and if you want to have the opportunity to ask some questions about namespaces. So, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about is tooltips on tables. You now have the option to define tooltips on tables. By doing so, the tooltip can be reused across all pages that has this field on it. This makes it much easier to maintain, and the likelihood for two tooltips to be different on two different pages is going to be reduced significantly. If you do have tooltips on a page, then there is actually still an option that you can override the tooltip. And if you don't want to do that, you can also just move it to the table with a new code action. I can do it for this specific control, and of course, as you would expect, for the entire document and for all in the project. And if I click this one, it magically disappears, and it should go up here somewhere. There it is. Easy peasy, right? Okay, moving on to the next thing. Let's see. We have a new action type that you can use. It's called the file upload action. It's a new action specifically designed for uploading files, and you can specify, of course, as you would expect, the allowed extensions, whether or not you allow multiple files in one upload or not. You get a new trigger as part of this, which has the first argument here as a list of file upload. This work introduced a lot of other goodies with it. So now we support list of interfaces, as you saw in the keynote, but also of file upload and in-out streams. So really nice to see where this will go in the future also. Maybe there's more to come in list of something. Yeah? Right now, in this version here, you have to specify the file encoding if you're getting the stream for the file that you've been uploading. In the next version, we will default as you would expect. But right now, you need to put the encoding here. And as you would expect, you can also inspect the file name that has been uploaded to figure out which one it is. Is it a PDF? Is it a document? Where do you want to put it? And so forth. And then you can do whatever you need to do with the files that have been uploaded. Pretty simple, easy to work with. Okay, let's look at something more interesting here, all right? Prompt dialogues. You've all seen them, and I guess a lot of you have already tried to do prompt dialogues. We saw them on the keynote, a good way of describing how the UI should look for standard UI in a Copilot experience where you want to generate some data. So this is a new page type. We call it prompt dialogue. It comes with some restrictions and limitations, one of them being that it has to be non-extendable. This kind of makes sense if you think about it. You're writing a prompt, some kind of generating content or something. How would you support somebody else extending that? That requires a bit of extra work. So you cannot extend it to begin with, at least. You can put a source table on it, but it has to be temporary. Again, we want to be secure in the way we generate content, so we recommend that users go and accept the generated content, and then you can copy it to the real database. The prompt dialog has three major layout sections. There's the prompt section. This is the place where you put in the data that needs to be a part of the prompt. It could be a free text like it is here, but it could also be the values of like dimensions or whatever you need in order to generate the prompt that will create content for you. You have the prompt options area here. We saw in the keynote there was a nice way to get quick access to some good prompts, to be inspired, or maybe to do the same task again and again and again. Here you can add your own. Oh, sorry, this one is wrong. Okay, I'm going to scratch that. We'll get to that a little bit later. Prompt options is the ability to add additional options to your prompt. In this case here, I'm adding error, so in which period of time you want to generate content for. It will be options on the list here. I will show you in a second. We'll get to the other prompt suggestions in a second. Okay, going to the last section here, the content, that's the produced content. We have the produced content here. In this car situation here, I want to produce some content that describes a car, and it's going to describe the make, model, year, and the description of a car. So all of that from my prompt. Okay, so that was the content area. Then we have the actions. First off is the system actions, and here you have now the ability to override or create the function that will generate content. You can also choose to implement regenerate, then you get the regenerate button, OK and cancel, and attach for attaching files to your prompt. And now we get to it. This was the prompt guide that I was talking about before. So this is the guides to give users quick access to easy prompts. In this case, here is an easy prompt for getting content for 70s cars. It's a nice V8 engine here I want to put in. I'm a car guy, I don't know. Okay, so here you can add all the things that people have to repeat every now and then. You could put in templates where they only need to change like a few parameters, and making it super easy for people to generate content from your suggestions. It can be a full suggestion. It could be a partial suggestion. You could also have combinations where users can choose 1 or 2 or 3, and then you'll get an even better prompt from the user. Okay, so how does this look? No. Let's have a look-see. So this is my prompt dialog here. This is the content area, and I've only implemented the generate function here. The error was what I was talking about with the options. Here I've added an option of 70s, 80s, and 90s cars. If that's something you want to put in, you can put whatever you need. And I have my prompt guide here, so I can easily select it. Okay? So far, so good. Let's move on. So, here we go. You saw the nice button in the center of the screen. You also saw in the keynote that that's what Ida and Vincent were presenting. That is this nice button here. These are actually Copilot actions that are in this menu up here. And the first one is the one that gets shown in the middle of the page. It only works for some pages. So it doesn't work for cart pages at the moment, but it works for list parts, and standard dialog and worksheets. And you can add whatever prompting actions you want. In this case, I'm going to add this nice little one here. And it's just going to run my prompt dialog. I can use this action to collect some more data and put it into the prompt dialog. In this case, it's just going to run it. And then hopefully something will come out of it in the other end. Okay. You might also have noticed this one. So we got the opportunity to add instructional text to controls. The instructional text will populate the grayed out text in the background of the control, so you can give users instructions on what to put into the control itself. Of course, this works for text, not for numbers, but in this case, I can show it here. So I have here, if I want to do a new one, you can see here I'll get it in the list, what I should put in. As soon as I click something, I can start typing, and when I type, it disappears. So it's not data, it's just a hint to the user. You also saw it in the dialog here as a hint to the user on what to do with this control. That's pretty nice. It's not tooltip, it's right there. You don't have to hover for it. Okay. Some unrelated features that we added. So for those of you who are working with number sequence, you will now find that there is a restart method on number sequence, allowing you to quickly restart a sequence. You can, of course, only also do it from a specific point in the restart or in the series, and for specific companies if you need to. But new functionality to add to restart number series. You also have functionality to reserve a range of numbers in the number series. This is quite useful when you do bulk inserts or bulk creations. So you reserve a range, and then you go through it as you would expect. Pretty nice. Another unrelated here to Copilot. For the secret text that we introduced a few releases back.
How many knows about secret text?
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, so secret text is a way for you to hide data from whomever is debugging it. As long as you keep the data within Business Central, nobody can inspect the data. If you send it outside, obviously the people you're sending it to will get the data that you're using. What we added in this past releases is that we added the support for isolated storage. So now you can get a secret text from isolated storage. You can also set a value in isolated storage using secret text. You have to be aware that once you've set a value with the secret text as the parameter, then you can only get that value using a secret text. So there's no way you can get it as a plain text anymore. That's also good. For HTTP client, we added a few optimizations, primarily around cookie management. So we now have a new type in the language called cookie. Allows you to create cookies. And you can see here it's fairly simple. A new variable, you set the name and the value. There you go, you have a cookie. You can use the cookies on requests. You can also set it directly on a request without a cookie variable, if you want to. And of course, you can get the cookie value from the request itself into a cookie variable. And you can loop through all the cookies that are in the request and get the cookies out of that request if you need to. Of course, so there's also a new property on the client called use response cookies. This allows you to have an ongoing session where you keep using the response cookies on the next request as long as the client is alive. And as you would expect, you can also do it from the response itself. You can get the cookies from there. Very nice. Okay. Last thing. New obsolete states pending moved. If you didn't attend the session this morning, then watch the recording. I'm not going to talk more about it. It's just a way for us to move data without actually doing breaking changes between applications. Final word from me is going to be debugging. So we've had to make some changes in the Visual Studio Code extension. That now means that we cannot support you debugging on older versions in the latest version of the VS Code extension. If you need to do this, you need to install a previous version that is compatible with that version of your installation. And the screenshot shows it, but let me just show it here also while I'm at it. So you go here, and you might think if you go here, you can find it somewhere here. But no, that's not where it is. It is over here. Right-click on this one and install another version. Now, which version to choose? So this is an ongoing discussion, I guess. 14 is 25, right? So minus 11, that's the trick.
It's easy.
It's easy, yeah. Minus 11.
When you know it.
Now you know. That's how to pick. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So talking about debugging, so another feature that partners have asked for has been the ability to debug the system application. And I don't know if you missed that, but we got a lot of feedback on that, and now you finally can. So that means that if you're either debugging your own code and it calls into the system application, then you can step into that. We still respect in the system app if there's any non-debuggable or secure text uses, basically, right? So there's still areas of the system app that you will not be able to reach. But by and large, most of the code you can debug. And the major benefits of doing that is, as I said, you can develop and troubleshoot your own code that calls into system app, but we also take pull requests for the system app from you guys as part of open source. And when you're working with that, of course, you would like to be able to debug and troubleshoot that as well, right? So that it is enabled by that. How many are doing contributions to open source in the audience? Not a lot. So that is a big opportunity. We see more and more contributions, luckily. Now, the reason we haven't enabled this before is that we actually needed secure text in the system application ourselves, right? So we needed to launch that platform feature and uptake it in the system application. Okay, let's switch gear and talk a little bit about some of the investments in app source. How many in the audience are ISVs having app source apps? That's nice. That's about 50% of the audience. So the first investment that we have is the ability now to have app source apps in a preview state. So that's actually a functionality that App Source Marketplace have supported for a long time, but we have not supported that. And so the way this works is that when you now submit an app to the marketplace, it actually ends up inside a partner center as part of the submit process. It will end up, if it passes validation, being in preview state. And that means that you can share that preview state with a select set of customers or yourself for testing out functionality before you go live. Right? So that's a nice way to ensure that everything works before you go live. And then in Partner Center, you can then say, go live with the application. And that ensures prime time readiness for the app. Now, any customers who opt in to this will be able to install the app and test that in their environments, but we, for now, only support sandboxes, right? And then they can provide feedback to the ISV that everything works. This is actually something that we backported as well, so it is supported in version 23 and higher. Now, the way it works is that when you are in Partner Center, you have to do this before you submit, right? Because the preview key needs to be defined before you submit. But in Partner Center, there is a place where on the preview audience, you can define, we call it a private key. You will also see it being called hide key or a flight key for that matter. But it's basically like a secret that if you know that, you will get access to install the app, right? And you can use whatever you want. You can also use the pre-generated string that is in Partner Center. And then you can take, and to install the app, to allow customers to install it, you can then share an install link. That's actually something we support already today, which is how many in the audience were aware that you can install an app source app by link? A little fewer. So that's something you can do already today. But what you then do is that you create a link where you then include the tenant ID of the customer, the app ID that needs to be installed, and the preview key, and you share that with the customer. The customer admin can run that, and it will be installed in their environment, right? Now, the installation process itself is business as usual. The only thing is during installation, the user performing this action will be told that this is a preview app. And if you try to install it in production, it will fail, as it is currently. So there's a couple of things that is good to know. If you are an app source publisher, an ISV, then we only support previews for versions that are higher or newer than the most recent public version, right? So you basically previews are thought of as the next version of something which is already public. And as I mentioned, you have to set the preview key, and you have to do that before you actually submit your app. We support multiple different previews at the same time. You can have different preview keys, and you can have them out at the same time. It will install the version, but in Partner Center, you will always only be able to see the last sort of preview. That doesn't support any kind of multi-tenancy. But as long as you have the link and the right preview key, then it will work. Talked about that. We actually, understand that the purpose of the preview is that you want to find issues and fix them. That also means that when a preview app is installed, we allow installing a new preview app version of that with breaking changes. All right, so it's actually allowed to do that between the versions of the preview. And the way we do that is that we actually perform a force sync between these, right? This doesn't apply to normal sort of public apps, right? But for preview apps, this is supported. Now, you can include preview versions of dependencies as well if they're part of sort of the preview package. And then it's important to understand that this is not intended to make sort of one customer off solutions for the ISVs. This is just for testing out functionality. If we then look at on the administrator side of this, again, we support sandboxes only by definition. We could do this in production as well, but we limited that for now. That also means that if you have a sandbox where there is a preview app installed, then it cannot be copied to or restored to a production environment. So if you have that, then you would have to either update the app to the public version and install that, if there is such a public later version, or uninstall the preview before doing those operations. And then if there's already a preview version on the customer's sandbox tenant, they can upgrade to a newer version or to the public version, right? And actually, if they try to install a preview version, but you submitted a newer version to go public, we will install the latest public version, right? So we'll always strive for that. So public trumps over preview apps. The same on upgrading, if we follow the app update cadence set for the environments, once that happens and there's an upgrade happening, if there's a newer version, we will install that newer version, the public version as well, and not just a preview version. Now, the installation of previews are tracked in telemetry just for normal apps. But we don't track them in extension management and the admin center. So there's a couple of signals here that you can see. If you want to know more about this, there's a couple of links here to the fact. We have a little video on this available on YouTube as well. We talk about it in the launch event as well. Okay, then another thing that we changed with AppSource is that a couple of releases ago, we added the ability for you to hotfix an AppSource app. And as part of that, when you released a hotfix for an older version than your latest public version, then we actually did validation against the latest version to make sure that there's an upgrade path for customers installing that hotfix to the latest AppSource version. But when we did the validation, we would validate against the first major version, or the first version on the next major version. But the problem, there is that that had limitations, and we got feedback from partners. So now we actually changed validation so that we validate against the latest AppSource version on the next version. And that actually allows partners to backport functionality, just like we're doing, as part of their hotfix, and there's still an upgrade path to the newer version for the AppSource app. I put in another link here if you want to read more about how we handle those versions. You will get the deck here later as well. Okay, then we have an embedded experience inside of the web client for browsing and installing AppSource apps directly within the client itself. And that experience has been deprecated by the AppSource team and instead been replaced by a set of APIs. And so given its widespread use, we have actually built a new experience inside of the client, and we call that the Microsoft AppSource Apps page. And so it looks like this. And it's, we understand this is the first version, we got some feedback on this, but please just, give us ideas, give us feedback in the usual channels. What it does is that it lists all of the available apps, just like in the old experience. Here you have maybe a little bit more information in the list. You can have the name, the publisher name, the install state, the last modified date, reviews, etc., in a little more easy to view scenario. Plus, you get the normal functionality for filtering list pages in BC, right? So now you can actually filter easily down to a certain publisher, see all of their apps, or just a little bit more powerful experience. From the list page itself, you have links that you can select. Well, actually, you have one link where you can just go to AppSource Marketplace and open that in the browser. But there's also another link where you have a selection, is it Shopify? I think I selected. And then you can go in and to the online marketplace just for that app itself. But you can also stay here in the client, and you can open the cart again now for the AppSource app here, Shopify. And again, from the card, you can go to the AppSource marketplace. So you can install from within here if the app is free or have a plan. If it's a contact me, you actually have to go to AppSource, and that's where you use this link that I highlighted on the page here, or from the list itself. Again, give us feedback on this. As with any other list pages, you can actually use analytics or analysis mode on this, and so that's another way that you can slice and dice and sort of see by vendors, etc. Okay, we have a little bit more. First of all, we have how many of the AppSource ISVs have heard about the transact functionality? Yeah, so basically, if you're an ISV and you want to sell licenses, you need to make money of that, so you have to build your own license management. AppSource has a functionality for selling licenses, or for customers purchasing licenses through the AppSource marketplace. We have support for transactability via credit cards for about a year now, with the use of entitlements. You can go in and find videos that we made on that. But in April this year, we actually added support also that these apps can be sold through CSPs. So ISVs can decide that they would like to extend the sale of their apps through CSPs with a margin share with the partners that are then the resellers. I'm not going to talk more about this, but you can go read more on ak.ms/bc app transact. There's also, it's not out yet, but we actually, Kurt Juvens and myself did a video on that from the launch event, and that should hit YouTube in not too far a distance from now. Then I think most of you saw the keynote this morning, where Vincent showed the page scripting tool. That's a tool to allow customers and consultants to easily record user acceptance tests and replay them, right? For ensuring a much better experience in UATs, basically. And we released that as a preview in this release. And again, there's a launch event video for this if you want to see more on this on YouTube. We'll get back to that later. Ida talked about the big investments we've done in docs. She covered the list. The nice thing about this investment is that actually helps in Copilot experiences for developers as well. So when we have examples and more coverage in docs, Copilot in VS Code becomes better at suggesting something in these areas. So that's why we continue, or I will be continuing to investing in docs, also because we've been told by you guys that they're not good enough, right? And especially they need more examples. But this is a first start. Then there's even more from the previous release. How many of you heard of the Open or Explore in VS Code? Where were you in the keynote? Because it was shown in the keynote, so you should all raise their hands, right? But if you haven't heard about, you might not know it by name, but maybe by function. But I'll show more about that. I'll show a little demo as well. But you should really go home and play with this. You might think, what's in it for me as a developer? It's also a good thing for consultants. But let's have a look. So, imagine that you want to investigate how a certain functionality works. Maybe Steffen made something. I wasn't part of that, but I would like to understand that. Where is his source code? How do I provision that? Integrate to GitHub, whatever. I pull the latest. I need to talk to him, etc. That's a little bit tedious, right? But that could be one scenario that I wanted to do. Another scenario could be that I would like to troubleshoot why something is not working. Again, to be able to debug, I need to set up VS Code, etc. And so, that requires some manual work. You have to open VS Code. You have to create a project. You have to find the details on the environment. You have to, figure out what is the session ID that is there if you want to attach to a user. You have to create a launch configuration for the environment and figure out the authentication to that, right? You have to maybe create an app.json and create the symbols, etc. Download them. Probably a scenario that most of you do every day. And it takes time, right? And so imagine that you could automate that, so you could increase the developer productivity. More of the consultants could do, even if they are not familiar with Visual Studio Code, maybe they still want to see how a field validation is being done to understand when the customer calls and there's a problem with the field, is that a bug or is that just because there's some functionality that needs to be straightened out? And that could even be used by support as well to troubleshoot this for lower time to mitigate. And so let's have a quick look. And as I said, it was actually shown in the keynote. So let me just see. Did I select the wrong one? Shouldn't it be just PC screen only? Shall we take duplicate? Of course. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it worked. I'm so much going to forget to extend back when I have to do a presentation.
Let's see. 2 developers to help 1 PM.
No. By the way, you guys promised to go down, so I had the stage for myself, right?
Yes, but then you would have been stuck now.
Yeah, maybe. I'm stuck now. So let's go to the customer card, right? And let's say that we want to investigate something. So how many are familiar with the page inspector?
Good. Very good.
But it's still only 60%. That's another exercise for you guys when you get home. Control Alt F1 to open the page inspection. For those of you who never tried it, it's a way to get contextual information about the page which is open. So I have my page here. I can see the page, page 21 is the one that is being used to drive this customer card. I have a link here to explore that page in VS Code. I'm not going to use that, but that's basically the same scenario that I'm going to show in a moment, but it just goes to the page, right? Then you have information about the table and what object that is. You can actually view table, if you don't know that. That's the old run table, so you can see all of the data that is in the table if you want to understand what data is beneath there. I'm not going to use that. But what I am going to do is, let's say that I have my phone number, right? And so I search for phone, I click the phone, and it will sync to where it is in the UI, and I'm blocking it, but it's down in the corner. Let's say that I have a problem with that, and I want to investigate that. And so I can pick in the 3 dots to explore field in VS Code. And this is where, as a PM, I, of course, hope everything works. And I did not close the VS before, but that should be okay. So if I had VS open already, it will ask if I want to reuse that or create a new, but I'm going to create a new. The idea was actually to not have it open, but never mind. So now it's going to close the project I had. It's going to create a new empty project. It's going to set up the launch configuration. It's going to connect to that environment. It's going to authenticate against that. It's going to download the symbols that are present for that page. Not all symbols, but the ones that are used for the page. And it's going to ask if I want to do snapshot debugging, which you can do in production, or regular debugging, which you can do in sandbox, or no debugging. I'll just do regular debugging for now. So that's going to set up. So now it's attached to that session. I'll go back to my session, and I'm going to do edit here. And it's a phone number, right? But I can do TechDays 2024, and that is not going to work. So it's going to trigger my debugger. I got an error. And so you see that I landed now on the validate functionality here, right? And I'm in debug, right? And I could do a phone number here. We have IntelliSense, and it says TechDays 2024. And I can, browse that and understand that. Super, super fast to set that up. I hope you can see that. If I was a consultant, just to stop this debugging, maybe I want to understand what this piece of code is doing. I don't know what this validation code is doing. And there we have our friend in the Copilot chat in VS Code. I'm going to do an explain of the highlighted code. And it's a sharp observation that it looks to be written in AL. So it gives an introduction. I hope you can read this. Can you see that all the way up there? Right, so it kind of tries to explain here that I'm trying to loop through each character and the phone number, and it's checking for letters in that, and it checks for changes in it, and it obviously does something else, right? Super quick, going from the client, going in to understand what are these things doing on tables or fields. That's what we're supporting right now. Yeah, just to go back to my presentation.
Yeah,
don't you think you can use that for something? I love it, but I'm a PM. So just a quick overview. I talked to this. You can open the page. You can open the fields. One thing I didn't show was that if you just want to attach to a session, to debug something, you can, in the help and support, there's an attach option. And when you pick that, it's going to do the same, right? You need to have permission to troubleshoot, and you need to have, the page inspector permissions here. Now, we're at the end. So, as usual, we have a lot of resources. You can go to Yammer, LinkedIn. We have the aka.ms/BC all, which is the landing page for everything. So that's a good starting point. YouTube, as I said, we got YouTube a year ago, where we have as many videos that we record, we put there. That's a super good place to go. Sometimes we have office hours on specific topics. This is the YouTube channel, aka.ms/BC YouTube. How many have been to the YouTube channel? Not enough. The rest of you go home and watch this Friday night. No, you can do it another time. Yeah, and that's the launch event. It's just, you can go there. We have 1 minute, 2 minutes left. Shall we take one question?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
We have 30 seconds left. Shall we take one question? because we have a T-shirt that we can give away.
Yeah.
Anybody out for a question?
Can I somehow hide the code of my app to prevent to see this using this?
Yeah. Oh, so that's a good. So in the last demo that I did, yeah. So for good and bad, we respect the IP policy. So that means that if you are an ISV and you lock down your source code, we will not show the source code, just as usual. So we respect that. So that means that this open in VS Code, which looks flawlessly now because you could see the code, if the ISV or the owner of the source decided that that should not be possible, it will be blocked. So I hope everybody thinks that's a good idea. For those of you who don't know it, 2 years ago, we actually added the ability where you as an ISV dynamically can add access or grant access to a reseller or any Entra ID. So basically, if you have an ISV solution and one of your partners have a problem and they need to troubleshoot, you could grant them access through the key vault, basically add the Entra ID for the partner there, and then they would be able to debug for the amount of time that Entra ID is in the key vault for that ISV's app.
Look up resource protection policies.
Yeah. Resource exposure.
Resource protection policies.
Okay. Good. Thank you for coming.
You want the last one? Okay.
Yeah, so maybe we should, come on. We don't want to steal your time.
Overtime.
So we are out in the expo area, so you're more than welcome to come and ask us questions afterwards.